down for what should be a simple daytime interview, only to be met with one of the most dismissive hosts on TV. In just under a minute, one provocative question set off a heated exchange that would uncover the real temperament of a talk show host who seemed to forget exactly who she was speaking with. Samuel L. Jackson arrived on the set of the Tamron Hall show that Tuesday afternoon with the same commanding presence that's made him one of the most admired actors of our time. The crowd greeted him with roaring applause as he walked confidently to his seat, flashing the familiar smile that's won over movie fans for decades. Tamron Hall, wearing her usual bold-colored blazer and an obviously strained grin, appeared more irritated than excited by the overwhelming response her guests received. Well, Samuel Jackson, everyone," she said, her voice tight and tone slightly condescending. "You sure know how to make an entrance." Samuel sat down with the ease of someone who's done hundreds of interviews before. "Thanks for having me, Tamron. Always a pleasure," he replied. But the energy in the room quickly shifted. The usual warm rapport between host and guest was absent. Tamron leaned forward, her expression less friendly and more confrontational. "So, Samuel, let's dive right in," she said in a sharp tone. "You've been in Hollywood for what, 4 decades now, and you're still trying to stay in the spotlight. When do you think actors from your generation should step aside and let younger talent shine?" The words landed like a punch. Samuel lifted an eyebrow, his face showing only a slight hint of surprise at such a bold start. The audience grew quiet, picking up on the sudden tension. "I'm sorry, what was that?" Samuel responded coolly, his tone calm but with that unmistakable edge known to fans of his work. "Step aside? Tell me something, Tamron, did you get the idea I was here to announce my retirement? Because that's news to me." Tamron chuckled dryly, but her laugh lacked sincerity. "Oh, come on, Samuel. Don't take it so personally. I'm just asking what the viewers are thinking. At 75, surely retirement has crossed your mind." Samuel's voice stayed steady, but his posture shifted slightly. "Tamron, I'm 74. And I have to ask, did your team even prep for this interview, or are you just winging it today?" With a dismissive wave, Tamron brushed it off. 74, 75, what's the big difference? You're not exactly a young man anymore, right? Samuel stared at her for a moment. "The difference, Tamron, is called accuracy, something journalism used to care about. But please go on. I'm very interested to see where this is headed." Tamron either didn't notice the warning signs or chose to ignore them. Instead of softening her approach, she leaned in harder. "Look, Samuel, let's be real. Your recent movies haven't been huge hits. Some say you've lost your edge. What do you say to those critics who believe you're just coasting on your reputation?" The disrespect in the question was hard to miss. Samuel's jaw tightened just slightly. "Which critics are those, Tamron?" he asked. "I'd love to send them tickets to my next premiere." Tamron looked evasive. "Oh, you know, industry people, folks in the know." "Industry insiders?" Samuel repeated slowly. "That's interesting, because just last week I wrapped a film that 3 different studios were fighting over. But maybe your insiders know something I don't." Tamron's smile turned stiff. "Or maybe they're just being polite. You know how it is in Hollywood, sometimes older actors get roles out of nostalgia, not talent." The insult hung in the air. Samuel's hands, which had been resting calmly, now gripped the chair arms slightly. "Nostalgia?" he repeated. "Is that what you think is fueling my career?" Tamron shrugged in a way that seemed intentionally irritating. "I'm only saying what others think. Don't blame me for the message." Samuel leaned forward slightly. "Tamron, I've been doing this long before you entered this industry. I've worked with directors who defined cinema. I've been part of films that made billions globally. So when you imply that my career is based on charity work, I start to wonder what your goal really is." But Tamron wasn't done. If anything, she seemed to feed off his growing discomfort. Look, I'm not trying to upset you. I'm just doing my job. Maybe if you weren't so defensive, we could have a better conversation. Defensive? Samuel's voice rose just a touch. Standing up for yourself against insulting questions isn't being defensive. It's called self-respect. Tamron rolled her eyes. See? That attitude, that's the problem. Maybe it's not Hollywood that's the issue. Maybe it's you. The studio went completely still. Even the cameras seemed frozen. Samuel stared at Tamron, his voice dropping low and sharp. What did you just say? Tamron, either unaware of the moment or simply careless, pressed forward. I said. Tamron repeated with a raised voice. Maybe the problem is you, Samuel. Maybe that's why your career isn't what it used to be. Maybe that's why you're here on my show instead of something like The Tonight Show. That comparison was the breaking point. Samuel's calm demeanor, which had barely held on through the conversation, began to unravel. He rose from his seat, towering over Tamron, who remained seated. His presence was powerful, and the shift in energy was impossible to ignore. Let me explain something to you, Tamron. He began, his tone filled with authority and experience. I came here out of respect. Someone from your team reached out and invited me to talk about my work. I didn't come here to be insulted by someone who clearly doesn't understand what professionalism looks like. Tamron tried to cut in, but Samuel wasn't done. His voice grew stronger and steadier. You want to know why I'm not on The Tonight Show? Because I choose where I appear. You want to know why my career doesn't look like it used to? Because it's better than ever. Every year I grow. I evolve. I work hard. And most importantly, I've earned the respect I carry. Tamron looked shaken now, her usually confident manner beginning to fall apart. Samuel, please, she urged. This is live television. Samuel nodded. Yes, it is. Which makes your behavior all the more disappointing. He remained standing, looking down at her not with anger, but deep disappointment. I've been in this business long enough to recognize when someone is being disrespectful, and right now, you're showing everyone exactly that. Having a talk show doesn't give you the right to look down on your guests. Tamron's face turned red, realizing the interview was slipping away. The audience was dead silent, some even pulling out phones to record the moment. Yet instead of backing off, Tamron made a terrible choice. She decided to escalate. Excuse me, Samuel, she snapped, her voice rising to match his intensity. This is my show. My name is on the sign, not yours. If you didn't like the questions, you shouldn't have agreed to come. Samuel's expression changed. Your show, he echoed, slowly. Let me tell you something about shows, Tamron. A show is only as strong as the respect it shows its guests. Right now, your show is falling flat on its face. Tamron stood up too, as if trying to match his authority, but she didn't come close. I don't need a lecture from someone who's clearly past his prime. She fired back. Those words hit the room like thunder. Several people in the audience gasped. Samuel's face became unreadable, still and cold. Past my prime? He repeated in a whisper, as if making sure he heard her correctly. Tamron, misreading his stillness as weakness, pushed further. I'm just being honest. Sometimes the truth stings. Maybe if people stopped praising you just because you're a household name, you'd finally get some perspective. Samuel took a step closer to her desk, his presence dominating the space. Truth? He said. You want truth, Tamron? I've been in this industry longer than you've been alive. I've worked with the greatest, Quentin Tarantino, George Lucas, Spike Lee. I've been nominated for Academy Awards. I've earned a star on the Walk of Fame. So when you sit there and say I'm past my prime, what exactly are you measuring that by? Tamron tried her usual hand wave, her go-to gesture that was quickly losing its charm. Awards aren't everything, Samuel. Let's be real, box office numbers matter too. And lately, they haven't been in your favor. Samuel raised an eyebrow. Is that so? He said. You know what, Tamron, do you even watch movies, or do you just skim gossip columns and think you understand the film world? Tamron crossed her arms. I know enough to know your last few films didn't even hit theaters. They went straight to streaming. Samuel gave a short laugh, completely void of amusement. Streaming? You mean the platforms reaching global audiences in the hundreds of millions? The same platforms that are changing the game in entertainment? Tamron, you're talking about the future like it's some kind of downgrade. She wasn't backing down. Well, it's not the same as the box office, she said, her voice rising again. You used to dominate theaters. Samuel's tone grew more serious. Tamron, I was in a Marvel film 2 years ago that made over $1 billion. But I guess your research team missed that little fact, too. The audience began murmuring now, their sympathy shifting noticeably. It was clear to everyone watching that Tamron had walked into the conversation unprepared and was now fumbling through a major misstep, live on air. Tamron, either still unaware or unwilling to admit how out of control things had become, tried to regain some control with a condescending tone. Look, Samuel, you're clearly getting emotional, she said, as if offering help. Maybe we should take a commercial break so you can pull yourself together. That suggestion, implying Samuel was the one being unprofessional, was the final spark. His composure, hanging by the thinnest thread, finally snapped. Emotional? His voice echoed through the studio, deep and powerful. You invited me onto your show. You insulted my age, disrespected my career, and questioned my intelligence. And now, when I respond with facts, you call me emotional? Tamron, the only one letting emotions run the show here is you. His tone was sharp and undeniable. Tamron's voice cracked slightly as she shot back. Jealous of what? Samuel stepped closer, unwavering. Jealous of a career that's lasted longer than most shows like yours. Jealous of the respect I've earned, not been handed. Jealous of the fact that I've worked for everything I have, while some people just get handed a platform and think that makes them credible. His words landed hard, and Tamron's face drained of color. She stared at him, unsure of how to respond. How dare you? She whispered, her voice trembling. How dare I? Samuel repeated. How dare I stand up for myself? How dare I expect a basic level of decency from someone claiming to be a journalist? How dare I not sit here and let you throw cheap shots at me while I smile for the camera? No, Tamron. The real question is, how dare you? Now clearly panicked, Tamron looked around the studio, as though silently begging for someone to step in. Samuel, you're making a scene. This isn't what our viewers tuned in to see. But Samuel turned to the audience, lifting his arms slightly. Your viewers, he said calmly, are watching their host attack a guest for no reason beyond her own insecurity. Your viewers are seeing something they'll never forget, not because of me, but because you've completely lost control of your own show. Tamron, desperate to shift the blame, tried one final dig. Maybe if you weren't so arrogant, people wouldn't have these problems with you. The words were a clear mistake. Samuel took another step toward her desk, his presence alone enough to silence the entire room. Arrogant? He said slowly. Confidence earned through decades of hard work isn't arrogance. Arrogance is thinking you can humiliate someone on live television and not face the consequences. Arrogance is assuming you know more than the people who've been doing this longer and better than you ever have. Tamron's voice weakened as she tried to push back. I've had a very successful career, she said, though even she didn't sound convinced. Samuel didn't hesitate. Have you? He asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like your idea of success is attacking people more accomplished than yourself just to make headlines. The studio was still, the cameras rolling as everyone, audience and crew alike, watched with tense silence. Tamron looked around for someone to intervene, anyone to rescue her from the mess she had created. But no one moved. Her team, as shocked by her behavior as the audience, stood frozen in place. "This interview is over," Samuel said firmly, his tone carrying the weight of authority that came from decades in the spotlight. "I showed up to talk about my work, not to be ambushed by someone who clearly doesn't respect their guests or this profession." But instead of stepping back, Tamron made one final mistake, a decision that would damage her reputation more than anything said before. "You can't just walk out, Samuel," she said with a raised voice. "This is live television. You have a responsibility to finish what you started." Samuel paused mid-step, turned, and faced her once again. The look in his eyes was sharp enough to cut through steel. "A responsibility?" he said quietly. "The only responsibility I had was to show up, which I did. Your responsibility was to conduct yourself like a professional, which you failed at. So no, Tamron, I don't owe you anything." Tamron's desperation was now obvious. She had lost the room, lost control of her interview, and was about to lose her professional standing in real time. But instead of stepping down gracefully, she tried to deliver one final blow, a desperate attempt at power. "Fine, Samuel," she snapped, her voice shaking with frustration. "If you want to act like a diva and storm off my set, that's your choice. But don't expect anyone in this business to take you seriously after this tantrum." Those words stopped Samuel cold. He turned back again, slowly, with a look that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. "A tantrum," he repeated, his voice now deadly calm. "You think this is a tantrum?" The room was completely still. Even the camera operators seemed afraid to breathe. Samuel began walking back to the desk, each step deliberate and steady. "Let me show you what a tantrum actually looks like, Tamron," he said, his voice crystal clear. "A tantrum is what you've been throwing for the last 20 minutes because you realized too late that you weren't ready for this conversation." Tamron attempted to interrupt, but Samuel's voice surged, cutting through her like a blade. "A tantrum is when a host attacks her guests because she's insecure about her own place in this industry. A tantrum is when you threaten someone's career because they won't sit back and accept your disrespect. That's what a tantrum looks like." Tamron was visibly trembling now, yet she couldn't seem to stop herself from making things worse. "I'm not threatening anyone," she said, her voice barely holding together. "I'm just stating facts about how this business works." Samuel let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "Facts? You want facts, Tamron? Here's one. I've been working in this industry longer than you've even known what a camera is. Another fact, by tomorrow morning, my phone will be ringing with new opportunities. And here's a final fact. What happened here today will be remembered long after your show gets cancelled." That final line hit her like a blow. Tamron stumbled slightly, as if the weight of the moment had suddenly hit her all at once. "My show's not going anywhere," she said weakly, though her words held no conviction. Samuel gestured broadly around the studio. "Your show," he said, "just aired 25 straight minutes of you tearing down a guest who came here as a favor. Your show just exposed what happens when a host trades professionalism for ego. Your show just proved that a platform doesn't make someone worthy of using it." Tamron was now completely pale, scanning the room for support, but her crew was still, all eyes fixed on Samuel with stunned admiration and silence. No one moved to back her up. She stood alone. "I was just doing my job," she whispered, the boldness drained from her voice. Samuel stepped closer, calm but unrelenting. "Your job," he repeated, "is to make your guests feel welcome. Your job is to ask thoughtful questions, ones that help your audience understand, not attack. Your job is to handle yourself with grace and respect. Today, you failed at every single part of your job." Tamron's last attempt at recovery came out as a plea. "Samuel, please. Let's just start over. Maybe there was a misunderstanding." The word misunderstanding seemed to freeze Samuel in place. His voice dropped low and steady, carrying the weight of hard-earned experience. "A misunderstanding?" he said, with disbelief in every syllable. "There was no misunderstanding, Tamron. You knew exactly what you were doing when you called me past my prime. You knew what you were saying when you claimed my career was running on nostalgia. And you definitely knew what you were doing when you said I was the problem. You did it all on purpose, thinking I'd just sit here and take it." Tamron clutched the edge of her desk, visibly shaken. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. Samuel continued. "I've met all kinds of people in this business, those who earned what they have, and those who had it handed to them. But I've never seen someone so eager to ruin their own reputation just to drag someone else down." She stood there, completely undone, and everyone in the room could see it. Samuel straightened his jacket and turned toward the main camera, addressing not just the room, but everyone watching at home. "To the viewers out there, I want you to know something. I have deep respect for real journalists and good hosts. What you saw here today," he said, gesturing toward Tamron without looking at her, "was not good journalism." Then, turning back to her one final time, Samuel finished with calm strength. "Tamron, I hope someday you learn that success isn't built by tearing others down. It's earned by lifting something up that matters. Today, you had the chance to do that. And instead, you showed the world exactly who you are." With that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the set with the same grace and strength he arrived with. The only difference now was that everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. They had seen what dignity looked like in the face of disrespect, what standing your ground looked like when being attacked without cause. Samuel didn't raise his voice. He didn't resort to insults. He simply refused to be belittled. And in doing so, he gave a masterclass in strength, class, and self-respect. Behind him, Tamron Hall remained frozen at her desk, surrounded by rolling cameras and a live audience that had just watched her lose far more than control of an interview. The silence that hung over the set wasn't just awkward, it was the sound of a career breaking apart. It was the sound of a reputation crumbling. And all of it happened because one host forgot the most basic rule of her profession: respect isn't automatic. It's earned. And real professionalism doesn't look like tearing someone down. It looks like rising to the occasion, and today, only one person in that studio did.